Michele, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, good morning.
It's a pleasure to have you, and thank you for spending some time with me today to share your experience from one-to-one coaching with me.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course, so we're going to dive into 10 quick fire questions just to get the ball rolling, to break the ice a little bit and for the listeners to get to know more about you. So are you ready?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so the first question is kind of 3 in 1. Your name, age, and profession.
Okay, so my name is Michele Roberts. I am 60 years old and I am a physician assistant. So practiced family practice for 25 years.
Beautiful. Sweet or savory?
Savory, but I think bread should be a category.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. You know, it's so interesting. Like most of my clients are either chocolate or it's bread or chocolate usually.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, we can have them both now. We're in food freedom. It's all good.
Yes.
Early bird or night owl?
Early bird.
Weights or cardio?
Cardio.
3 things you love.
The ocean, my family, and books.
Amazing. Have you got a favorite quote or mantra that you live by?
I don't know if it's a quote, but I often tell myself that our lives are the stories we tell ourselves. And we make up stuff all the time. So you might as well make up a good story.
Oh, I love that so much. And there's so much truth behind that as well.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, something that you either like or that you do that others may consider a bit strange or weird.
My sheep, I think. I love sheep. And I raised sheep for 5 years and people just are like, why sheep?
Oh, I've helped lamb before. Like I did a lambing season with, and it's, oh my God, like I remember like you do that with the lamb's mouth so they can take their first breath, and it was so special.
It's amazing. It's amazing watching them give birth. And I love them so much. They are, to me, they are meek and quiet and content. And those are things that we don't value in our society. And so that resonates with me for some reason.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Michele. Okay, number 8, 3 things you love about yourself.
I love my hair.
Beautiful.
I love my sense of humor. And I love my heart. I have a really big heart.
I love your heart too.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, number 9, a bit of a strange question, but it's from me, so anything can happen, right? If you was to be a mythical creature or an animal, if you don't want to go to the mythical side, what would you be and why?
I think I would be a bird of some sort, maybe a seagull, because I love the ocean and I've just always had these fantasies about flying. When I was a small child, I dreamed about flying all the time. So
maybe he was a bird in a past life.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Mine is also a bird, like a spirit, like an eagle.
Yes.
Like
yeah, they're very majestic.
Yeah.
Seagulls are a little,
Yeah, but seagulls are cute. Seagulls are cute and they live by the ocean, which is what you love. So
yes, exactly.
Okay, last question. If you was to fast forward to the very distant future when you're on your deathbed and you've lived a wonderful life, you're looking back on your life that you've lived, what are you most proud of yourself for?
I would say for the love that I radiated to people.
I love that. Amazing. Thank you for sharing those.
Yeah.
And let's go into how was your, so obviously you and I have had 3 months of one-to-one coaching, and you're in my group as well,
Yes.
which I love. What was you struggling with, like when you first came to me? If you remember, because sometimes we forget these things. Now we're in food freedom. We're like, what did I used to do actually?
It is amazing how quickly you shift your mindset, and it's hard to put yourself back there sometimes. But I had been yo-yo dieting for probably 40 years and got to the point where I couldn't lose weight anymore. I couldn't stick with a diet anymore. And I was binging, and I just felt like I was never going to get full. I could just eat and eat and eat. And I used to think, like, what is wrong with me? Why do other people stop? And I just keep going, and I just had so much shame and despair over the binging. And I was so sick of it all. I was just so sick of it all. And I just thought, I don't want to spend the rest of my life doing this. I have to find a way to stop it.
What was one of the, if you don't mind sharing, like 2 things, what was the most craziest diet you've ever done in your life? Because that is quite humorous. When we're recovered, we can look back and be like, oh my God, I remember doing this. That's the first question. So like, what do you remember doing that was so ridiculous?
Yeah, I don't think I tried anything super crazy. Being in the medical field, I like sort of knew I wasn't going to do the cabbage diet or
You were saved from that one.
yeah,
It's
anything
awful.
too ridiculous. But I mean, I feel like I did try everything, anything that had some scientific evidence surrounding it, like, low carb, intermittent fasting, low cal. I remember calculating macros for years, oh my gosh, it just makes me sick thinking about the time and energy that I spent on all of that when I should have been living. But and I did Weight Watchers multiple times. So I tried. My husband was always so supportive of whatever I wanted to do, and so I'd say to him, oh, let's try going vegetarian, and he'd be like, okay. And it got to the point where he was, when he would go to the grocery store, he'd be like, now remind me, are we eating meat this week? Are we not eating meat this week?
Oh, that is so cute. And I can relate so much. Like I remember when my mum and dad were together and I was still living with them, because I started dieting at a young age. I remember my dad was like the same because he was the cook in the family.
Oh,
okay. So he was like, what diet are you on? Are you on a diet this week or not? Okay, which one are you on this time? Are you on the 9-day diet, the cabbage soup diet, the Weight Watchers, the Slimming World? And it was like a bit of an inside joke. Like it.
Yeah.
Bless your husband.
Yeah, he's been such a saint.
What does he think now? Like now you've found food freedom, like, because I've not actually asked you this personally. What does he think about it all?
I think he still sadly, I think he still has a diet mentality, and I feel like I've influenced him in that direction. And we talk about it a little bit, but for himself, not for me, but for himself. And I see him like struggling, like trying to buy the small size clothes when he needs a medium size, because it's in his head too. It's not just women, it's men now too. And but I think he's been, again, so supportive of this journey that I'm on. And when I first decided to work with you, I went to him and I lost it. I just started bawling and told him about my binge eating, which I had pretty much kept secret. And he was just so supportive and was willing to go along with whatever I felt like I needed to do to be happy. So, and he loves my body, and he tells me that all the time.
What a gift he is. Well, of course, because he's a very lucky man to have you in his life as well.
he's
Indeed.
wonderful.
He sounds it. And
Yeah.
if you don't mind sharing, because I know that from personal experience as well, like I got to the depths of the bottom of the lowest lows, like when I was binge eating. Do you remember like the worst possible binge that you had, or the lowest moment you felt around, whether it was just to do with your body or whether it was to do with a binging episode, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, it was around Christmas time. And just we had all kinds of junk in the house, which we always do at the holidays. And we have in Chicago, which is where I'm actually from, we have this popcorn. It's called Garrett's popcorn, and it's gourmet popcorn, and it's amazing. And at Christmas time, they make hot chocolate popcorn. Yeah.
Why did I not know about this?
I have to send you some. But it's chocolate coated popcorn. And I mean, I just remember eating like this huge tub of it. And I was so sick and just felt so awful. And I just couldn't stop. I remember like going back over and over and over again. And I mean, it's almost like an out of body experience. You're just like, well, I guess I'm giving into this. I just guess I'm going for it. And it's the worst feeling in the world. And, I had even gotten to the point where I went to my doctor and got medication for weight loss. And, it didn't work. It didn't work. It was an appetite suppressant and one other medication. And that didn't work either. So I knew it was not just in my head, but I knew I had to change my thinking. I knew I had to change my mindset, because when even the drugs won't work, something's not right.
Wow. I bet that made you feel, well, I don't want to put words into your mouth, so I'll ask you the question instead. How did that make you feel when you got the medication? And I can imagine that it would almost feel like, oh, thank goodness I've got something that's going to help. Yes. And then when that didn't work, like, how did that make you feel about yourself?
It made me feel super hopeless. Like and I didn't want to take the medication in the first place. So it was sort of like a last resort thing for me. And then when that didn't work, I just felt complete despair.
I can imagine. And just one last question around the despair kind of feelings, then we are going to go up and then share how you are now. It's not just all depressing.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that, because I think it's really key to go back to the word you used, like you used to eat in secret, because so many women that I speak to are so ashamed to even admit that they eat in secret. And of course, the whole secrecy is because of the shame, and they don't want to share what they're struggling with, even with loved ones. So how did that affect your day-to-day life without you being fully honest with the man that you're living with?
Yeah. Again, I think there was just a lot of shame around that. Like I had to hide who I was. Like he didn't even know who I really was. Like I was this out of control fiend, and my children didn't really know it, and he didn't know it. And it felt awful.
Yeah. And then when you shared, how did that feel when you finally kind of just not admitted, because you've done nothing wrong, but just been like, this is what's happening?
Yeah, it was a huge relief. I mean, I bawled. I just cried my eyes out because I did feel so ashamed, and he was so accepting of it. Like, like it's okay. So that thing that I was like, didn't want him to see all those years, he accepted it anyway.
That is so beautiful. And I understand your emotion, because in fact, I had this experience last week after, TMI probably, but after a lovemaking experience with my amazing fiance, I just lay and cried. And he was like, why are you crying? And you know what? I was like, I almost feel like this is so good to be true. Like what we have as a relationship, and obviously you and your husband are the same. It's almost like, how is this even possible for me to have this? It's like a worthiness wound coming up, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And I love that you've received the support from him and then from me, which takes me to, you found me from my podcast, I think I remember.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And what made you choose me over possibly another coach that does something similar to me?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I just basically was looking for a podcast about binge eating. And, I think that's probably the search that I put in. And then when I saw your picture and your face, and I could feel the love coming through. And so I was just drawn to you. I know it was meant to be, but I just felt like this was somebody that would understand, because you had been through it as well, and who could be supportive.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I really do. And anyone that does know me, my biggest superpower is like I said to Vouty yesterday, I'm literally a ball of love just walking around.
Yes, yes. You
And that's
are.
just my gift.
Yeah.
So thank you for acknowledging that.
Yeah.
And a question that I didn't know whether to ask, but I think it's really key to ask because a lot of people can get stuck from this perspective. How did you feel about the financial aspect when you were deciding whether to press play on investing in yourself?
Yeah, that was difficult. That was difficult. I felt like I was so desperate. I was so desperate. And I just felt like from the podcasts that I had listened to of yours, that I knew it would be, you were the right person to guide me to a better place. So at that point, it was very easy for me to spend the money. It was a lot of money, and I was like, because I had just retired and I don't have really income coming in anymore. But like I said, I was in such a bad place, and I knew you were the right person, and I knew it would be worthwhile. And oh my gosh, it was.
Thank you. And I feel the same. And again, I just want to resonate. Like when I hired my first coach, when I was at rock bottom, I almost got to that place where I almost don't care how much it is. And then of course I do. You've got to physically be able to pay something. And I had this intake call with this coach, and I was like, how much is it? And I was like, oh, holy shit. Like I just have to go on a credit card. But something within me was like, I haven't got a choice, because I cannot go and continue doing what I was doing. And also feeling a bit stretched enabled you to show up and actually do the work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's an important piece of it. When you spend that kind of money, you know that you're not going to just blow it off. You're going to put in the work. You're going to put in the time. And I mean, for me, the group coaching is great, but for me, I think I really needed the one-on-one coaching. I really do. And that I took advantage of the messaging. I mean, we messaged each other almost on a daily basis. And it would have been really difficult for me had I not had that access to you. So it was the right decision for me.
And it's been an absolute honor to work with you. And I don't say that lightly, because, when clients come to me, of course, I know that you have the same beliefs around the universe and source and all of those things. So we attract each other into our lives. And so the clients that I work with on a one-to-one basis, I love working with them. So the message support that is there, like every day, it's a high paying, it's a high ticket price for one-to-one coaching. So I'm going to give everything to ensure that you have that transformation and support that you're looking for. So again, thank you for sharing that, because I love the message support. It's so key, because I'm here anytime. It's not just a call every so often.
Right.
It's the constant communication and support that's there.
Right. And I needed that. And I remember, I think the first call we had, I said to you, you're a law of attraction girl, right? And you said yes. And I just knew I could tell from your vibration, like, oh, we're on the same page.
Oh yeah, I think I squealed a little bit when you shared that. I was like, oh yes, we can speak this language.
Yes, exactly.
So
And I
true.
knew together we could create a better life, a
Mm.
better perspective for me.
So how is your relationship with food and body now, Michele?
Oh my gosh, it's so natural. And
Mm.
I don't pay attention to it that much, which is amazing because it took up so much of my energy previously. But
Mm.
it just feels very natural now. I don't stress about food. I don't stress about going out to eat. I don't. And we were talking a little bit about the intuitive eating, and I looked at some of those modules about intuitive eating, but I was doing so well, and I thought I don't even want to really look at that because I don't want to get all up in my head about eating again. Right now it feels very natural. When I'm hungry, I eat. When and I eat whatever sounds good to me at the moment. And I have had the experience of, thinking, well, I could use maybe a little bit more fruits and veggies in my life, but I take your advice and I add them in on top of whatever else it is that I want instead of trying to substitute it for something else. And it just, I stop when I'm full, I eat when I'm hungry, and it's just so natural and I don't think about it. And that to my goal when I started this was to stop binging, but I never dreamed that I could just feel so natural about eating. Was beyond my expectations.
That's incredible. And I love the word that you use, natural, because if you think about it, before diet fuckery gets us, which can feel like it's literally starting in the womb for some of us,
Yeah.
before we're conditioned by all of that, eating, if you think about it, it's just a natural, I love the word you used again, natural. It's just a natural, easy thing that you do. Like in your body, it's like going for a wee, putting a coat on if you're cold. Your
Yes.
body's like, hey girl, you're cold, go and then you just go and do it. But with this eating thing, we have this whole massive fuckery around it.
Yes. Yes.
But it's
And
meant to
I
be
just keep,
easy.
when I was on the journey, I just kept thinking the less I can think about this, the less I can be up in my head about this, the better off I'll be. So, I just waited for the signal that from my body that I was hungry, and I wasn't like over vigilant about it. I wasn't like, oh, I need to check in with my body. Am I
Mm.
hungry? Am I not hungry? I just, I just forgot about it. And then when the moment came, your body will say, hey, it's time to give me something to eat.
Yeah.
So
And do you mind sharing? Because I know, like, towards the beginning of our coaching, I know that you noticed like some acid reflux, and then you were getting curious as to like what was causing that. And first of all, how is that now? And then how did you navigate that without restricting? Because I know the doctors say cut out X, Y, and Z. And obviously, I'm there like, I'm not a doctor, but please don't.
yes,
Basically.
yes. So I was finding that well, to me, this whole process is when you stop restricting, you kind of go a little bit crazy. And me being the savory bread girl, I consumed a lot of, bread and carbohydrates. And so, and it was starting to give me some acid reflux. So we talked, and I read, did a little research, and I found that is a possibility. So we talked up, and you suggested that I try different kinds of carbohydrates. So I tried rice and potatoes, and started incorporating more of that and less flour-based products into my diet. And I did find that, what I started doing was just not having bread at every meal. Like if I want, because typically I want carbs in the morning. So if I have something, super high in carbs in the morning, like toast or bagel or, you know, pancakes or something like that, then I just try not to have bread, you know, like a sandwich for lunch and then bread again at dinner. So I found that if I keep it to 1 or 2 meals a day instead of all 3 meals a day, that I do pretty well. So
And why do you think that you was able to have that little shift? Because it's depending on who you was asking, someone might see that as intentional restriction or adherence to maybe not having the extra carbs. But why do you think, as you know, my saying is dieting is not an action, it's a state of mind. So why do you think you were able to do that from a place of curiosity compared to maybe before when you tried and then you just ended up binging?
I think probably because I still could have something else carb based, just not flour based, and because I just felt like this as it's not something I have to cut out completely. I just need to. And the other thing is, it was about listening to my body. You know, instead of like portioning things out or limiting things to, you know, whatever. It was like, well, if your body is telling you that this thing is causing discomfort, it probably means you ought to take it easy, you know. So it was kind of looking at it more from a perspective of what my body wanted and needed.
Or than like a mindset food rule.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's beautiful. And how quickly, because I know it's not about the speed, because this process is the opposite of diets. But
Yeah.
for those that are listening who are considering going on their own journey to food freedom or getting help from me or somebody else, we know that we like quick results because of the world we live in.
Yes.
So in your, like, in all honesty, did you see results? Well, I say results in quotes, like whatever that means to you. Did you see progress? Let's change the word to progress quite quickly, or did you say it took time? Like, what was your perspective on that?
I think for me, it happened very quickly. It was like a mind shift. And you and I talked, and you know, a lot of people in the group were struggling with, like, you know, not knowing if they were overeating or, you know, where they were at with all of that. And I remember you saying to us, you know, and I was struggling with that a little bit too. Like, how do I know if I really want this? You know, is it my mind that really wants this because I haven't had it in so long? Or am I still really hungry, or does my body want it? And, you know, again, kind of in your head, overthinking everything. And then, you said, instead of asking yourself if you're full, ask yourself if you want more. And I was like, that's brilliant, because it shifts your whole mindset from this restriction, limitation, like, oh, have I had enough? You know, is this little bit enough for me? To there's this whole abundance of food out there. You can have it whenever you want it. If you want more, have more, you know. And so I just really practiced that. And that I think was really the turning point for me. I remember you also said, if you're asking when it'll get, when you won't have to think about it anymore, then you're still thinking about it too much.
Exactly. When people say, when will I know when I've reached my set point weight? And I'm like, when you stop asking or thinking when you're going to reach a set point weight.
Exactly.
It's so hard though, because we're so used to like the old diet, the control, that at least give me something, some tangible thing that I can either start to try and accept or work towards. But the beauty of this work is you literally don't know. Your body changes from day to day, and
Yes.
it's coming back to yourself, which can be very scary, but you just really became accustomed to it. I would say you just came back home to yourself.
Yes, totally. So it happened very quickly for me. I would say 4 to 6 weeks probably into the process. I was like, well, and I was enjoying eating all the things that I had not let myself eat for years and years and years. So I was like, this is great.
It's so liberating, isn't it?
Yes. But, you know, I think the hardest part for me was just surrendering to the fact that my body was going to be what my body was going to be.
Mm,
And, you know, that was the key for me, because, you know, we all still have the fear that we're going to get bigger, we're going to continue to gain, we're never going to be what we had hoped we were going to be someday. You know,
mm,
I had to grieve that. I had to grieve the my ideal body that I was hoping to get to someday. So I had to
yeah.
grieve the loss of that, and I had to completely surrender to it's going to be what it's going to be.
And I know personally how hard that is. So can you give anyone any tips, or whether it's just a choice, like from your perspective, on how to practice that every day? Because I know that when you reach that stage, that is true freedom, but
Yes,
getting there or keep choosing that can be very difficult sometimes.
it is difficult, but I think what helped me is just to realize that it didn't matter what I was doing. It was going to be that anyway, so I might
Mm,
as well accept it, you know. Because certainly I couldn't lose weight anymore by dieting. I couldn't stick with a diet, and even when I did stick with a diet, my weight wouldn't budge. So I mean, there comes to a point where you just realize that it my body's going to do what it wants. And you know, and I think trying to focus on just being healthy too.
mm. How is your body like now in terms of, because everyone's biggest fear, 99.9% of the women that I speak to, is of course weight gain
Yeah.
or gaining weight forever or potential weight gain and all of those things, which of course we go into depth during coaching. But has your body settled? Did you gain much weight? Like, let's just address the elephant in the room for those listening who are worried about the biggest fear coming true.
Yes. I probably gained 5 to 10 pounds. I
Mm,
mean, enough to where I had to buy new clothes.
yeah.
And that was hard too. I mean, you know, I had some really beautiful clothes that I spent a lot of money on. And, you know, just going through my closet, putting everything on, saying, nope, that's not going to work anymore. That's not going to work anymore. That was depressing, you know. Um, but but then yes, I have settled, definitely have settled where I am. And it wasn't that much more than where I was anyway,
Mm.
5 to 10 pounds probably.
For saying, if you look at the life you have now compared to the one that you let go of, where you wasn't losing that weight anyway, it was just a constant struggle. And I like to describe it as like, do you have IKEA in the US?
Yes, we do.
Yeah. So it's like going to IKEA, buying a build yourself wardrobe, coming back home, building it, dismantling it, building it. That's what I describe yo-yo dieting is, because like it's all when you put it in that perspective, it's like, what's the put, like, why what are you doing?
Yes,
And
yes,
that's what we
exactly.
do, but we constantly are striving for that smaller body. And I'm so glad that you brought up the grieving process, because that is so necessary.
Hmm.
Because once you energetically let go of the ideal or whatever the hell you was chasing for God knows how many years,
Right.
then you can step into the new version of you who chooses freedom, and you've chosen health and all of the things that you have now.
Yeah. And I did ditch the scale right away.
Yes, that is key. How did you
Hmm.
feel about that? Because that can bring so much anxiety, as you know.
Um, I think I was okay with it. I mean, I really surrendered to this process. I was like, you know, dang, I'm spending a lot of money and I'm gonna go through these modules. And I just was like, I'm 100% in. So if they tell me to ditch scale, I'm ditching the scale.
That's where you need to be. So I love to work with women who are in your position, who have literally like, seriously, what the F? I need to do something differently, but I have no idea what to do. That's
Yes.
my ideal client, because people who have one foot, and this will happen, I mean, I've done this countless times in my recovery, one foot in the diet door and then one foot in the recovery door. That's why I think the investment helps, because I experienced the same. I paid thousands of dollars. My coach was American. And I was like, this has got to work, because literally what I've spent all this money. If she tells me to go to the end of the road and do a silly dance, I'm going to do it.
That's kind of where I was at too. It was the money, and also just feeling like I've tried everything else, and I'm just over it. I'm just done.
Yeah. What was your favorite bit about coaching? Was it the modules? Was it the calls? Was it, like, if in your own words, like, what if you had to choose a favorite part?
The calls, for sure. We just made so much progress on some of the calls, and really I feel like, once I cleared this food nonsense overthinking out of my head, there was like so much stuff that came up, relationship issues that came up, and self-worth issues that came up, and some trauma from the past, and guilt. So there was, I feel like we worked on so much beyond the food stuff. I think, in a lot of ways, the food stuff was a distraction for me to avoid dealing with some of the deeper issues. So I think you and I pretty quickly kind of moved past the food stuff, and most of our coaching sessions were about other stuff.
Do you know, Michelle, that is so often the case. Honestly, I would say on average, the first 1 or 2 sessions are about food and diet mindset, and all the other sessions are basically about relationships, self-worth, self-love, boundaries, all the other deeper stuff, which is what I love to talk about, because as you now know, food is just a distraction. It's a symptom of something else. So we need to address the food thing, of course, because that's like going on in your life, but it's a lot deeper than that. And it's been an absolute pleasure to guide you through and to see the transformations you've had with nothing to do with food in your body, with loads of other stuff that matters more than just food and body.
Absolutely. And those are things that pills and diets can't fix.
Oh, yes. How has coaching changed your life in the context of what has it enabled you to do or show up differently?
Well, so you and I talked about at the very beginning, like freedom. That word freedom is just like and you know what, maybe that's what attracted me to your podcast.
Because I'm preaching freedom all the time.
Yeah. And I wanted freedom. And so I think, I'm sorry, what was your question?
No, of course, like what, I'm literally looking at my notes. How has coaching changed your life? As in, what are you now doing differently compared to when you weren't living in freedom?
Yeah, and showing up differently. Yeah, I definitely feel much more free, and not just from the food, but I feel free from a lot of constraints to make other people in my life happy, and to smooth over things in our family. We have a really big family with lots of people, so there's always, dynamics going on. I won't say drama. Drama's a kind of a strong word.
You're looking at it through. It could be.
Yeah, there are certain dynamics. We have 5 kids, 4 grandkids. So when you get that many people, there's going to be stuff that happens. And so, but that was such a burden to me, because as the grandma, I felt like it was my responsibility to make everything all right for everybody. And I am now experiencing such freedom from that weight on my shoulders. I mean, I literally have been seeing a massage therapist for years for my shoulders and my neck. And it's because I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders, and I just don't feel the need to do it anymore. I don't. I feel like so much more able to let people have their stuff, knowing what's mine and knowing what's theirs, and really working on my stuff and giving them the opportunity to work on their stuff.
Wow, I love that. It reminds me of one of our group calls, actually, when you were describing your situation where you were spinning all the plates like in a circus. And I was like,
Yes.
drop the effing plates. Would you say you've dropped the plates?
I've dropped the plates. Yes.
That's
Yes.
incredible, honestly. And you know, I wanted to share this with you, but I'm going to share it with you now, and then also it will help other people as well. You know how, and without getting into your story, how you've just shared that you used to like take on everyone's thing and you used to be the fixer and it was all on you.
Mm.
If you think of a caterpillar in a cocoon, and then obviously it becomes a butterfly, did you know that if at the time, like when the caterpillar's like turned into a butterfly, but it's trying to get out of the cocoon, it's trying to like fly out and get whatever it needs to do, if you help that caterpillar butterfly get out of the cocoon so it can fly quicker, it dies within a matter of hours.
Oh my
It
gosh.
needs the struggle.
Uh,
I mean, if that isn't, and I genuinely think caterpillars were born to show us humans like how to do life in general, because there's so many analogies that we use with caterpillar and butterfly.
yes.
Isn't that powerful? If you was to help it, it would actually die. Whereas if you was to leave it to like, it looks like it's struggling and you want to help so much and you want to do it for it, but
Yes.
actually doing that causes them death. And I think this can be a lesson to all of us, including me, like when we think we're helping, are we?
Right. Right.
That's like, yeah, just very powerful.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways helping is preventing people from growing and maturing and finding their own power. If they're depending on you, they're not finding their own power.
Oh, yes. And again, I see the word restriction. Isn't that interesting? Like, obviously, we've talked about food, restriction, and freedom. Preventing, I see it as restriction. So, although you think you're helping, you're actually hindering and restricting that person's growth. And it can be so hard, can't it? Because you know you can help, you know you can quote fix it, but actually, they're going to be a much happier human being over time if
Yes.
you watched and was there with the love, but then they did it themselves. So,
And that's it. And and their journey is not my journey. I mean, my choices are not necessarily what's best for them. They have their own perspective, they have their own path to follow, they have their own influences, and and they're a different generation than my generation, and they have their own challenges that I didn't have. So, my choices and what I think is best may not fit them. So, and I think as a mom, you have to recognize that. You have to, because you spend so many years like trying to guide them in the right direction. You have to come to the point where you realize like you are not their source anymore. They need to find their own source.
And not being a mother myself, I can only imagine how difficult that is. And so just want to just acknowledge you, Michele, for how inspiring you are and how strong you are as a woman, and knowing everything you've been through to be where you are now. And I mean, I feel emotional. It's just such an honor to just see you blossom into the butterfly. Let's use the butterfly energy again. And also the effect that you're having in a positive way on everyone in your life, because the butterfly effect, let's bring it in again, it's real. Like the more you show up for you, for yourself, and love you, it helps other people to do that for themselves. And it's obviously such just a big picture. Whereas to think 4 months ago, 5 months ago, you were sat crying over binges because of what you'd eaten or not eaten that day. It's just crazy.
It is crazy. So different. It's so different. But I have to thank you. You're an integral part of that journey for me.
Thank you.
So.
Well, it's my pleasure. And talking of me, if you was to describe me in 3 words, what would they be for those that don't know me?
Radiant, loving, present.
Thank you. I received that. And would you say, I know you've mentioned it before, but it's a direct question because the investment is a big one. Would you say what you invested in yourself and the process that you've been through, was it worth what you received in return for that investment?
Yes, it was priceless. And so much, again, so much more than I really was expecting. I was expecting just to be released from the obsession of food, food and diets and weight and all of that. That's what I was expecting. But like we said, we went so much farther beyond all of that to really dig up some of the root causes of the disordered eating that I was experiencing. And that's where the freedom really comes from.
Yeah. What would you say to someone who is perhaps listening to this or watching this that is considering starting their own journey to food freedom and body love, which is going to be different for everybody?
Sure.
What would you say to them, or more powerfully, what would you say to your past self at the moment where you were like, what shall I do something or shall I not? What would you say?
I would say you're worth the investment. And you only get one life. And if you're standing on the precipice making that decision, it's time. It's time to start living your life.
Oh, Michele, so thank you. Thank you just for sharing. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you to you for putting the work in to be able to have this conversation. Yes, I can be your guide and your coach. And like I said, I'm a walking ball of love that absolutely helps, but I can't do the work for you. Sometimes I want to, but then at the same time, I don't, because the pain, like the whole butterfly thing again, you wouldn't be the person you are now if you hadn't been through all of that yourself. So thank you for showing up for you, which just basically heals the world.
It does. It does. It has a ripple effect on everyone around you. Yeah.
Thank you, Michele. And if you don't have to share, but some clients like to, if someone did want to reach out to you, whether they just want to follow your life or like ask you a question, can they do that? And if so, is it through Instagram or Facebook or just this conversation and that's it? How do you feel about that?
Yeah. My Instagram is Sycamore Shell. And my Facebook is just Michele Roberts. So
I'll link those below. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Michele. It's been an absolute pleasure. I really appreciate you. And I really hope that this conversation has helped others.
Yes, I hope so too. That was my intention.
Thank you, Michele. And Queens, I will see you next time.